Hey guys, Phil Hoken from Reversaru here, and thank you for tuning in to today's video. This video will explain what we plan to do in reversing the 5EAT transmission. So it's a 5-speed automatic transmission. This particular one came out of a Turbo Liberty or a Turbo Legacy if you're in America, and they're also common in the H6 Outbacks and vehicles like that. So look, they are a little bit stronger. The teeth, you can see, are a little bit more coarse than the 4EAT. They are used in the 6 cylinders and the turbos. And so what we'll do now is, in this video, we'll show you the process that we go through in order to reverse this transmission. So the first thing we need to do, and the first step of that process, is to actually make it 2-wheel drive rather than all-wheel drive. So as you can see, we've removed the end transfer case and the clutch basket, and then we'll take you through the video of what we do here and how we do it. And then that's all in order so that we can use the RGBs, which is the reverse drive reduction gearboxes brought out by Reversaru, and they'll bolt to the side of this transmission. So this transmission will be reverse driven via and by the reduction gearbox that bolts to the side rather than reversing it at the back. So stay tuned, have a look at the video and enjoy. All right, so this is just a bit of an overview of what's got to happen to get this to be 2-wheel drive, the back of the 5EAT transmission. So if you look at this gear here, that gear there makes contact with this gear, and when this gear turns anti-clockwise, this one turns clockwise. That's connected to, or there's splines to the diff pinion shaft that runs all the way up the front to your front differential. So that's how that all works. This will spin anti-clockwise, diff pinion spins clockwise. That's in its normal operation. But if you have a look, this gear here is actually integral and a part of the main shaft that goes all the way through the middle of the center of the transmission there. And then these planetary gears run around this sun gear in the middle. You can see like that. So if you keep an eye on that gear as well as this shaft, you'll see that the gear spins, but this gear in the center and the shaft doesn't spin. In other words, what I'm trying to say there is that it's not joined. The center gear, the top gear is not joined to this shaft. So what we need to do is join that top gear to this shaft. So what we'll do is we'll cut this, the planetary gear housing off, and this clutch basket, we'll cut all that off back to here. Disassemble it first, get rid of the planetary gears, take them off, cut through here, and then I'll get this transmission in the press upright. So this will be at the top, so the press will be pressing down on this, and we'll press the shaft in so we know it's centered. Put the bearing in, get the shaft in, put the bottom gear in too, press it in, and then tack weld this gear to this shaft. And then we plan on using a 4EAT thrust bearing at the top on this main shaft here. So we'll then turn a little lip on that shaft, and then the 4EAT thrust bearing will sit on that shaft, and then we can make an end cover plate. So anyway, that's a bit of an overview, and now I'll get to work and make it all happen. Okay, so we've got one shaft there that goes all the way in to the transmission, set of planetary gears there. All right, so I've disassembled all the planetary gear set, taken this off the shaft. Now I'm going to cut these off because I need this gear independent to get back on this shaft here. Alright, so this is the transmission we've just been using as a jig, and then now we'll put the top shaft in, which the bearing here will center the top shaft, or at least the gear, and then the journals through the middle of the transmission will center the shaft. And then if we just put a little bit of pressure from the press down just to hold it in place as we tack it, so it doesn't distort as we get heat into it, that'll keep it true and square, and then we'll be able to weld it off. And we're just going to bring the press down enough just to get a bit of pressure. And again, this is just so when we do start tacking it with the welder, it doesn't start distorting under the heat. Just a bit of pressure there. Yep, that should be good. So at the moment, between these two teeth here, there's 0.08 of a mil backlash. And so once we weld this off, we'll then check it in 8 different spots around there, 8 equal different angles, and then make sure the backlash is still the same gap the whole way around. Make sure it's square and running true. That's been fully welded around there now, and as you can see, this backlash is still there. Where am I? Backlash is still there, so we'll keep the pressure on the press there, on that shaft, just while it cools, so it doesn't distort or move as it cools, and we can then go and check the backlash in probably 8 or 10 different spots evenly around the gear after that's cooled down. All right, so we'll check backlash at this point here. Yep. 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 All good. And so because we're not using this gear anymore, I was able to turn a lip on that shaft, and then this is the thrust bearing on the top shaft, the 4EAT. Bearing in mind this is the 5EAT, so that goes there. So when I make my end cover plate now, there'll be just enough crush, perfect amount of crush on this bearing from the cover plate, like that, just to keep all that in line and running true to each other, those gears there. All right, so there's the clear piece of perspex. That'll go there, it's just the right height, and then I can clearly see where to mark all these holes. And then once I do, I'll transfer this shape onto a piece of steel or onto aluminium, whatever I choose to make the end plate out of. But that's just so you can see the process of what we're doing. Tighten that one up there. And then you can have a quick look at these holes that see all the 3mm holes, and now I can transfer that onto a steel or aluminium plate. So the first part of trying to reverse the transmission is just getting it run 2-wheel drive first. So this is a H6 Outback, it's a 3 litre. That's the engine code and the transmission code. You can see it's a TG5C. And now we'll put this up and show you what we're going to do underneath. So this is the other 5EAT that I've been working on. That's just a thicker 12mm perspex plate. I think I will run perspex on the back. I've made a steel one as well, and then made another perspex one, but that's a lot thinner. So anyway, we plan on swapping this over into that vehicle over there. All right, just so you can get a visual, that's the 5EAT transmission out of the H6 3-litre Outback, that's the tail shaft. Currently running 2-wheel drive. I've made a Perspex clear cover. So you can see that's an idle, that's in drive, and just an idle. Okay, so we'll put it up to 60. All right, go to 60. Just hold it at 60. Okay, so first test drive of the 2-wheel drive H6 Outback. I thought there would have been more lights that come on, but that may happen when we drive. I've got my little fella here with me. Say hi.
Hi.
He's coming for a drive. First drive in the 2-wheel drive Outback. So we'll see how we go. And drive there now. Okay, we're not sure at this stage whether we'll be in limp mode or not, or whether we have to do anything to overcome any engine lights or faults or limp mode. No, change is good, first to second. We sure are, buddy. So the sport light is flashing, traction control's flashing, ABS is flashing. So all those are kind of expected, but it's driving fine, it changes gears fine. All right, so apart from a few lights on the dash, it's driving great, nice and smooth, changes are perfect. So it doesn't seem like it's gone into limp mode just from disconnecting that front speed sensor. So yeah, it's looking pretty good so far. We'll keep putting kilometers on this and then bolt the RGBs to the 5EAT and reverse it. So on this side of the transmission, you've just got to undo the oil pump bolts here. Because the RGB sits here, we just reposition these cooler lines up out of the way, and then we'll be able to install the mounting plate we've made and the RGB. So now that we've successfully driven this as a 2-wheel drive, what we'll do is we've got some brackets here, made these out of steel, just as the first ones to trial this. That will bolt there using this hole here, and then a couple of bolts off the back of the oil pump here, so that will hold the RGB. The RGB is here, the reverse drive reduction gearbox that bolts to the side of the transmission. And then what we'll do, once we get those bolted up, we'll put this in a Vanagon, which is here, and we will test drive it as a reverse drive in this vehicle. All right, so we're about to install the end cover plate, which is here. This will be made out of aluminium when we're actually done and completed, but this is just a steel one we've made just for this first one. And then there'll be a mount integrated and integral to this plate. But yeah, so for this one, as you can see, this end transfer case, or the housing, has actually got a little ring there. And so because our plate is flat, out of flat steel, we've actually got a 5mm thick ring here that will most likely come separate to the case when we do produce them. So you'll get the end cover plate and the ring, and then you'll just install the ring like that. You can put the tiniest little bit of grease behind that to keep it there if it wants to fall out, and then we can install the plate. So just to give you a bit of an idea of how this all works and why that ring is part of the kit, because that's that ring there, or simulating that ring there. And so now we'll be able to make a bracket that comes off here that then goes to the rubber mount that we will use in the T3 Vanagon. That's the first plate that we've got on. So there's a 12mm standoff there between the box and the plate. And then we've made And you can see the gap there. That gap that is there on purpose so that we can get this dead perpendicular and level to this surface, so that the drive that comes out of the transmission into our reduction gearbox is perfectly perpendicular on all axes. So that way we can sort of twist this, and then once we get it right, we can then hold that up and prop it, and then weld this, and then weld it off while it's in here, and then we'll let this cool down not in the vehicle, on the transmission as it sits there with it all bolted up. So we're getting closer. That's the two pump bolts that we've used, these brackets. And as I've mentioned in other videos, whenever we do things like this is just for the testing, and then we'll get all this CNC cut or laser cut, or maybe even made out of aluminium, we're not sure yet, but that'll be all nice and neat once we finish and get this into production. Okay, so we're up to the part where we install this shaft. It's a coupling that goes inside the transmission here into the front differential, and then that coupling there is driven or drives the RGB. So we can now go ahead and put that in. There's no real need for a circlip there because it can't walk out or move anyway. So that's now in, and now we can put the RGB up on top and start bolting it down. Okay, so we've got the plates now on and welded up. We've welded the plate in here, we've made a little gusset there, and then I'll show you from around this side. There's the standoff and the plate going through here. So we've got both pretty much on, and now we're good to take it off and then bolt it to the engine and then up into the vehicle. Okay, so the two RGBs have been bolted up to the transmission. That's the end cover plate just there. And so now we're good to bolt the transmission to the EJ25 engine under there, and then we can start test driving in this vehicle. It's the EJ25 engine and the 5EAT Subaru automatic transmission, a 5-speed auto, bolted in. So that's the RGBs. We've done this little bracket here today, straight off the end plate, going to the standard mount. We've got a bit of clearance up the top, because as you accelerate, this will end of the transmission will want to go up a little bit. And then tomorrow we work on CVs and CV axles and angles. And then we've filled the RGBs up with 80-90 gear oil. And later on we can do split tests and maybe do 75-90 in one side, 80-90 in the other, and then we've also got a temperature gun that we'll shoot at the cases there. Once we get down the freeway and do some different styles of driving and types of driving, we can point the temperature gun at the RGBs and just take the temperature. But yeah, I thought I'd give you a bit of a visual of how it all sits and how it's all positioned. And now we'll work on doing the CVs and axles today, and then it's road test time. Okay, so that's just a comparison for the axle. As you can see, it's around 305 to 310 millimeters when you take into account the little bit of overhang, and that's just a comparison of another VW axle. But yeah, so all the 3D modeling and all the tests that we've done so far, trial fitting it, looks like it's going to work perfect. That's from the top. You can see the RGB down the bottom there, and there's another one buried down in there. So it does bring the transmission sort of engine forward, or towards the rear of the vehicle I should say, which makes it more accessible. I mean, you can see the diff filler there, which is really easy to get to. So usually that is sort of back there with a standard Subaru transmission, but the 5EAT is longer, so it brings it out further, which then has the engine sitting out further. But there is a gap there. It's tight, but it works. That's the wiring so far. That's the TCU out of the 5EAT, all joined in, and that's the ECU from the EJ25. So we haven't sort of wrapped it all up yet. It'll be a lot neater than that in the end, but yeah, that's where we're up to at the moment with wiring. All right, so we're on the first test drive of the 5EAT 5-speed auto Subaru transmission. in a T3 Vanagon, been reversed by the portal hubs, or the reverse drive reduction gearboxes. Nice and quiet, no noises, like I'm talking silent, which is good, from the transmission and also the RGBs. There's no whine, there's no noises, bearing noises, which is great. Okay, so that's cruising, that's fifth gear, cruising about 110 kilometers an hour, or just over actually. It's driving really well. Look, we knew it was always going to drive well and the transmission would operate perfectly, because we'd driven this transmission as a two-wheel drive in the outback for all our testing before we reversed the drive of the transmission. So really this test drive and these next, thousands of kilometers that we do on these is just testing the RGBs more than the transmission itself, because the transmission, as you would have worked out by now, is all spinning the correct way. So there's, it's not running on the wrong side of the tooth, the crown wheel and pinion and all that sort of thing. That's all running standard and the correct way. And then the reverse drive is achieved by the RGBs. So yeah, they're driving really well, they're smooth, no noises, which is great. So yeah, we'll keep testing and keep you updated. Okay, so we've just done some freeway driving. We've got the temperature gun here, so we'll jump out. We did about 40 minutes at around about 110 kilometers an hour. So we'll get out here and so 47 there, right near a bearing. The other bearing's there. 47, go underneath. 47, that's an average of 46.8, and just so we can show that it's working, go on the valve cover. 72 on the valve cover. And then back to here, where the bearing is, right there, 47. So that's well and truly acceptable. But yeah, just thought I'd show you the temperature that they're running.